Hello, I'm Brigadier General Denis Thompson, the Commander of Canada's Special Operations Forces. Canada's Special Operations Forces are among the best trained and most professional in the world. Regardless of the threat or security environment, we stand ready to defend Canada and Canadian interests at home and abroad. Canadian and American forces have a long and distinguished record of service together. It is a strong and unique bond, one that continues to grow to this day. But that bond is not something new. Indeed, it was born out of the Second World War. The 1st Special Service Force, or Devil's Brigade, was a unique Canadian-American Special Operations formation that saw Canadians and Americans wearing the same uniforms, firing the same weapons, and fighting side by side in the same units. They were virtually indistinguishable, one from the other. This short film captures how the legend of the 1st Special Service Force was born. I commend it to you. Enjoy.
This is Monte La Difensa in Italy, a 963-meter former volcano that dominates the approach to Rome. This is where the 1st Special Service Force made its name. The force was created in August of 1942 during the Second World War. It was a joint Canadian-American Special Operations Forces organization designed for commando operations. In 1943, while the Allies were gaining ground and pushing back the Germans, the force was deployed to the Mediterranean theater. On arrival to Italy, the force was attached to 2nd Corps 5th Army, which in November of 1943 was stalled at the gateway to the Liri Valley. German defenses on Monte La Difensa and surrounding peaks blocked their access to Rome. 2nd Corps had already tried multiple assaults up the southern slope. They were all unsuccessful. The force was now given the task of taking the mountain. Their approach would be different.
Well, they were going to try and go around behind the German lines and up the cliff. You just couldn't get up the front way. And at the start, when we got out of the trucks, it was mud and it was pouring rain. But in the long run, that was good because they couldn't see us at night in the rain. And we finally got out of the ruts where the trucks and that had been in a little better ground. And we just kept marching and it stopped raining. So you really didn't get any perspective of what you were doing until the night after, when you started up on the cliffs. It just didn't give you anything at all.
The difficulty of the climb with combat loads was compounded by the dark night and the wet, treacherous terrain. Scrambling in the dark up the rocky trail with every foot and handhold doubtful demanded superhuman effort by men loaded with weapons, ammunition, radios, and litters. To our ears, every rock displaced clattered downhill with sound magnified 1,000 times and raised the question in our minds, did the enemy hear this? A not very comforting thought.
And when we started to go up, we had the artillery. They say it was a 900-gun artillery barrage that lasted for 4 hours. The noise allowed us to get, the boys in the lead allowed them to get the ropes up, and we got on those without being found out.
Having just recreated the climb here on La Difensa, we are truly in awe of the accomplishment of the veterans on that day. Using top-of-the-line equipment during the day in optimal conditions, we can only imagine what it was like for them. In imminent presence of the enemy, in darkness, the fear of the unknown. We are truly in awe of their accomplishment that day, and we can only hope to honor that as we move forward with our history. And we will endeavor to do that.
Once the Forcemen reached the top of the cliff, the battle was only half over. They now had to advance over 300 meters over this terrain to attack the German positions from the rear.
Suddenly, the sound of rocks falling, a German voice challenging our two scouts. All hell broke loose. 5th section dove behind a small ridge of rocks immediately in front of them. 6th section sprawled to the left in a more exposed position. German machine gun fire was withering, hitting the rocks in front of us and spraying shale all around us.
It didn't take them long to get switched around. It didn't take long. They were a good outfit. They're the Hermann Göring boys. Some of these German soldiers are good, and they were a good lot. So it was a tough fight while it lasted. But once they got it and got out of the saucer, and contrary to what some other people think, yes, there were prisoners taken. Reflecting on that afterwards, I say, my God, if you hadn't had the proper training in that, what would have happened? And that was the main thing. Without proper training, you'd be lost. That's the whole point of, and that's why special forces are special, because they're properly trained.
The complexities of close combat in mountain terrain such as this really does speak to the strength of Special Operations Forces. This kind of terrain is non-conducive to conventional type tactics. That's where the 1st Special Service Force demonstrated their strength in taking La Difensa. The lessons learned here on this mountain are extant even today, and were used extensively by the Canadian Special Operations Regiment in its pre-deployment mountain training for Afghanistan. That warrior spirit, that mental and physical toughness demonstrated by those forcemen of the 1st Special Service Force in La Difensa are the foundation for our ethos of the Canadian Special Operations Regiment.
On top of Mount La Difensa, it's important to reflect not only on the battle itself, but on the lifelong bonds that were formed between forcemen of two great nations. Whether part of this battle or not, the courage and tenacity that were shown on this mountaintop created friendships that would last a lifetime, cross borders, and transcend generations. In fact, the memories and friendships formed on this mountaintop have done more to sustain the legend of the force than the battle itself.
After the battle, Colonel Frederick's immediate superior praised, "I am fully cognizant of the stubbornness of the enemy and the difficulties of weather and terrain encountered in the seizure of Mount Difensa and Hill 907, and of the bravery, fortitude, and resourcefulness with which your command overcame them." The force captured the summit on 3 December 1943. However, it took a full 6 days to clear the entire feature. In the process, they suffered 23% casualties. With the Canadian-American blood shed on this mountain, the force became a legend.